Welcome to the Five Petal Podcast. I'm your host, Bridgid Berkano, a mystic home, hearth, and parenting coach, here to help you come home to yourself through the 5 petals of the well woman's rose. Through interviews and reflections, we explore what it means to care for your whole self, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, physically, and relationally, so you can live with more clarity, self-trust, and rooted connection. Let's dive in. Hi, everybody. Okay, so for this episode, we are talking about the relational petal, and I have brought on my friend Lindsey because it's nice to be in relationship when talking about the relational petal. And I'm so glad you're here to help me out because I wasn't really wanting to do it all by myself. It felt kind of silly. So thank you for being here. Lindsey and I met in a community for female entrepreneurs, and we decided to be accountability partners. So we just kind of meet and talk about our work every week. So that's what you're getting when we come into this. And so I'm really glad that I can have Lindsey on. So about the relational petal, before I introduce Lindsey, here's how I want to introduce this and build some context of like why I included it in the 5 petal framework. So have you ever met somebody who was like an optimal human being? Like, I have this avatar in my mind of like they have the perfect diet, the perfect workout routine. They keep their house just so. They always look so polished. They have like this laser sharp mental acuity. And everything looks wonderful. But then when you get into a little bit of like a messy human situation, they can't handle it. And they freak, and they realize like, oh, you are in a glass sort of like terrarium. You are able to control your life so specifically that like you don't have to contend with the wild expanse of the unknown. This is why I bring the relational petal into my coaching work. Because I think that, you know, in our society, it's like we have all these resources that we can completely isolate ourselves. Like I can get my groceries delivered. I can do all of my communication via just written text. Like I don't have to speak to anybody. I don't have to see anybody. I can work without making any sort of human contact these days. And that is very new for humankind. We used to at least be in relationship with the land, which we are not anymore. It's like it really takes a lot of work to be in relationships. So but I think it's so important, and we're going to talk about why it's important and how we can nurture our relationships. Thank you for sitting through this, Lindsey. I'm going to introduce you now. All right. Lindsey Bourne is a trauma-informed relationship coach with a deep passion for helping people navigate the complex terrain of love and connection. With a master's degree in integral counseling psychology and training in marriage and family therapy, Lindsey brings a rich background to her coaching work, blending psychological insight with grounded, compassionate guidance. Her work is rooted in the belief that our intimate relationships serve as mirrors, revealing the unresolved wounds, protective parts, and patterns that keep us stuck. Lindsey guides clients towards greater self-awareness, emotional clarity, and relational freedom by helping them explore the roots of their patterns and triggers, identify old narratives, and reclaim their self-trust. Based in the Bay Area and working virtually with clients across the country, Lindsey also facilitates narrative therapy groups for incarcerated veterans with PTSD at the San Quentin State Prison. Very cool. Welcome, Lindsey. You can say hello now.
Thank you so much, Bridget, for having me. I'm really excited for this conversation today.
Yeah, me too. Great. So, what got you into all this stuff?
Mm. What got me into this? Yeah, I think I've just always been drawn to relationships, love, connection, intimacy. I find it's some of the most meaningful relationships are some of the most meaningful experiences in our lives. And we're not really taught or given the tools how to navigate them. And on top of that, they, like you mentioned in my bio, they bring up all of our deepest wounds, all of our deepest past experiences, like kind of just all of our baggage, our shit, for lack of a better word. And so many people, I think, because we aren't taught how to be in a relationship, we aren't taught sort of what relationships bring up. When all this comes to the surface in intimate relationships, we see it as a sign of incompatibility or a sign that the relationship's just gotten too hard,
Mhm.
and we dissolve, we walk away, we break up, and I just feel like it's such a loss, um, that that's often the solution. When I really believe that the sort of the things that arise in relationship are really sort of guide us towards our path towards healing. And so sort of give us an opportunity to really look at what are these attachment wounds from our childhood? What are these unresolved experiences? What are these patterns that just keep coming up? And how can I work actually within this relationship and within my partnership with my partner to really release these?
Yeah. Yeah, our relationships are mirrors for what's going
Hmm.
on inside of us. Can you give an example? Speak a little bit more to that?
Yeah, so we are, the way our unconscious works is so when we're young, really from age 0 to 7, we're like so imprintable. So um our early experiences in that age range imprint on our unconscious. And so when we experience things like neglect, abuse, or even like things like slight misattunement from our parents, it can be egregious abuse and neglect, and it can be subtle. It's like there's such a range, but we are constantly developing when we're that age and constantly scanning for our attachment figures and our attachment experiences. And so when there's ruptures within those attachment experiences, that imprints in our unconscious. Um, and it creates a template in our unconscious of sort of like, um, it can create a belief, I'm unlovable. When I get close to people, they hurt me, et cetera, et cetera. And that's sort of what's imprinted in our unconscious. And then throughout our lives, we attract people and experiences that reinforce those beliefs, those experiences. Um, for example, intimacy is overwhelming. So anytime maybe you get close to someone when you're dating, it's overwhelming, you shut down and you withdraw. Um, but really what those and our unconscious is drawn to what's familiar. There's a repetition compulsion from psychoanalytic theory. There's like we're just drawn to kind of continuing to attract these experiences, and people can feel really frustrated by this. They have like, they feel like they're just cursed in love. They feel like they're doomed. They just keep having these same patterned experiences over and over. And really, what's being sort of guided is actually a deep healing of some of those early experiences and some of those like templates and some of those beliefs.
Yeah, yeah. I just want to reflect back. That's so interesting because we have different terminology, right? Like you're coming at
Hmm.
this from like the I mean, not only academic, like you obviously have a deep understanding of it, but you have that behind you. And I'm translating it into my energy work understanding. So
Mm,
what I would call this when you talk about attracting relationships and experiences that are familiar to us, we would call that your web. Like you have this web around you,
mm,
and then
mhm,
people enter into it, and it's like the way that we interact, it's like I can feel when I'm in somebody's strong web because I'm saying things that I wouldn't normally say, even. And
mhm,
that's an
mhm,
interesting thing too. And it's like it's the way it's hitting
mm.
me, it's like it's bringing something out of me.
Hmm.
Yeah, just a really interesting relationship dynamics. But yes, please give me a good example.
Okay. Yeah, so I worked with this one client for a while and she gave me, permission to share her story. So when she was young, her father had some infidelity and he left quite a bit. Um, Created an abandonment wound for her. And so she's navigated, she's known about this abandonment wound a lot of her life. And sort of the way that that manifests is that when her dad came back, she had this like hyper vigilance around feelings of disconnection. And so worrying about just him leaving again and all just like really trying to protect herself and really to feel safe and to sort of like if she could just be hyper vigilant enough her father wouldn't leave again and she wouldn't have to feel that abandonment again. And as she grew older, her father had to set boundaries with her. And so those boundaries really like represented this sort of feeling of disconnection for her. And so boundaries were really dysregulating for her. She had a lot of experiences of her father setting boundaries in like really harsh ways, and that creating really big reactions in her, anger, and just bringing up all of that abandonment again. And so she had a really sort of fraught relationship with boundaries. So then fast forward, and she's an adult and she's navigating romantic relationships. And she came to me sort of like, I have this thing when I get into relationships that like I have this like kind of insatiable desire to connect and to be with people for communication, et cetera. And, she mentioned that a couple of her relationships had actually, not worked out because she gets so sort of like insatiable for connection and at some point the person can't take it anymore and they have to set boundaries. Those boundaries are really dysregulating. It kind of kicked up a whole cycle for her. And so she's in a she was kind of coming to me in like a year into a serious relationship that she was really, excited about and really was like, I don't want to fuck this one up. So let me like, I want to work with you on this, like this desire for communication. And the first year of the relationship with her partner was all great. And that's how it is. You're in the honeymoon. It feels so compatible. And then it is about a year in, a year and a half in. It's sort of different for everyone. But then all those wounds come up and you're like, oh no, here it is again. And she started feeling that desire to just connect, 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 and this like insatiable and kind of started demanding and just asking and asking and asking. And her partner, who she thought at first was the one to heal this wound in her, was then starting to say, like, okay, I need some boundaries, like this is a little bit too
Hmm.
much for me.
Hmm.
And they got into this like dynamic that basically she was wanting more connection and he was having to put up a boundary, and when he put up a boundary it totally spun her out. Like it triggered her abandonment, it triggered her anger, and it made her want to come closer. And then he simultaneously had this wound around um people not respecting his boundaries. That was like kind of his main wound. And so she would demand and come closer, and he would feel overwhelmed and back up. And then him backing up would trigger her abandonment and sort of anxiety. And then she would come closer.
Yeah.
And then, it was this whole just kind of dance of them kind of perfectly just like activating each other's sort of core wounds.
Yeah. And then, so what's the treatment for that?
Yeah.
I mean, I can think of mine. Like, what do
Yeah.
you guide them to do?
Yeah, so I'm like one of the values I hold most in my coaching practice is self-responsibility. So I think it's so easy when we are in partnership, especially when things get difficult. But when I work with couples, like the main thing I see is couples coming in and blaming each other. Like I'm trying to
Classic.
connect and yeah, he's just withdrawing or he won't do the dish. Like it's just there's this finger pointing. He's this
Yeah.
and she's that, and that's it. And so what I'm really asking folks to do is really like do the U-turn, which is a phrase in internal family systems, is like pointing the finger sort of back at yourself and taking really like full responsibility for what you're experiencing in this dynamic. So in this situation, I asked her, instead of sort of pointing the finger at him and saying like, I feel so lonely, he keeps withdrawing, I just want connection. I asked her, can you rephrase this? When he sets a boundary, I feel X. And so, like, when he sets a boundary, what is happening inside of you? And she was able to name the anger, the fear, and really the abandonment. It felt like abandonment. It felt like he didn't care about her. He felt like she felt like he was abandoning her. And it was directly mirroring what she experienced with her father.
Mhm.
And so I really worked with her to sort of understand how might we work with this wound in such a way that you can sort of own it, understand it for yourself, and not blame or make it your partner's responsibility, so that when he sets a boundary, you don't have to feel all these like really intense feelings. And really, I believe the way to do it is to just let her feel that feeling. And so that's a big thing I do, is that when we are young, we have these experiences that are really overwhelming for the psyche. So that can be like terror, that can be, fear, overwhelm. There's lots of different feelings. And basically, we spend our whole life creating all these defense mechanisms around ever feeling that feeling. And so she hadn't really allowed herself to really feel what that abandonment it felt like. It's every time that came up, she was just like clawing at, the person
Make it
in
stop.
relationship with.
Make it stop. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, I
Yeah.
want something else. I don't want to feel this.
Yeah. And
Hmm.
so you're relying on someone else to soothe this wound in you. And what she was finding is that, to a certain extent, her partner could do that. And then he just tapped out. Like he was just like,
Right.
like, this is a bottomless, insatiable wound,
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I'm really we did some really deep, that's where some of my somatic work comes in. That's where
Right.
my parts work comes in. And so what I did, what I do with folks is really, first of all, like, what is that feeling when someone has just set a boundary with you? What are you feeling inside of your body? And for her, it was like this burning sensation in her chest. And so we really sat with that. And I have folks really sit with that and just, it's amazing what happens when you just sit with a sensation in your body that you've sort of avoided feeling for so much of your life.
Yeah.
And really, because our bodies store memory and emotion, when you really immerse yourself in a somatic sensation and just let yourself feel it, all of a sudden memories come back, like so much imagery, sensation, all these associations will start to come back. And all of a sudden, she just had all these memories of when she was younger. And so basically, I'm working with, that young part of her, that inner child, to sort of reprogram some of these memories and experiences and really like ultimately help digest and metabolize that feeling of abandonment and allow sort of her present day self to resource her inner child enough to be able to sort of be in relationship with her partner in a way that she could honor and respect his boundaries.
Yeah. Yeah. And this thought that kept coming up hearing you say all that is like you're building your internal relationship with these different parts of yourself. And yeah, I would call it like the loving inner parent or
Mm-hmm.
a higher
Yeah.
power of some sort, just like soothing, like, I got you, I'm here.
Yeah.
And it's such an honor as a, a healer or a coach or therapist to be able to hold that space for someone
Mm-hmm.
because
Yeah.
that therapeutic relationship of like, I can handle this feeling in you.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you want to tell me more about that? It's that need to be seen and just
Mm.
allowed to express exactly as you are. It's so tender and it's so real. It's so human. Like, this is the experience of exquisite
Yeah.
sadness. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, and internal family systems, they have some language around sort of what you were saying, like the higher self, the wise adult. That there's a lot of different vocabulary that folks use. What IFS is called it the capital S self. And so the capital S self is sort of the self that encompasses all of your different parts. And at any one time, that self energy is available, and that self energy is your most grounded self, like you're present. It's kind of like the self when you're meditating.
Mm.
It's like some call it like the Buddha nature, but it's like it's your true essence and it's available to us at any time. But what happens is we have all these experiences that create all these parts in us, and these parts are just kind of always sort of obscuring that self. So it's like your
Mhm.
8-year-old self that was bullied, and your like angry self, and you're this self, and you're that self, and all these parts are happening. Um, and we can get blended with parts. So that means like we're just completely like we've completely lost the self part or the self energy, and we're completely in a part. All we can do is experience a situation from our 8-year-old self that was bullied.
Yeah.
And so what you're trying to do is help folks like unblend from parts, come back to that self energy.
Mm.
And the self energy is grounded, compassionate, curious, connected. It's all these beautiful C words that Dick Schwartz,
Yeah.
the founder of IFS, created. Yeah. And sort of the work of coaching is over time to be more self-led as a person instead of parts-led. And so to be like build the awareness of, oh wow, I'm in this part, let me take a moment to come back to self.
Yeah.
But like as you were saying, it's like creating an attachment relationship with that self to heal
Hmm.
those wounds rather than
Right.
when we become adults, our romantic partner becomes our adult attachment figure. So like I
Yeah.
was saying, we're then depending on them to heal all of our attachment wounds. And so what this work does, the way I work with folks is to take that attachment and that expectation off of your partner and back onto yourself.
Yeah. I'm just remembering like early on in my relationship with my husband. We've been together for like 12, 13 years. And when we started seeking counseling, I remember her telling me, like, you want him to be your dad. You keep like wanting him to be your dad. Like she was so
Hmm.
blunt. And then,
Yeah.
yeah. And then that was like
Yeah.
really eye opening. I'm like, oh, but he's like my age and we're peers. And okay, I get it.
Yep.
That was
Yeah.
really important. Um,
Yep.
and vice versa.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's what happens. We get wounded in relationships with our early caregivers when we're younger, and then we attract people that mirror that same exact experience as an opportunity to heal. And so usually one of the first questions, and it's interesting because it can actually mirror our relationship with our mother or father, like, or whatever gender. It doesn't have to be, usually we think of it as like the opposite gender.
Hmm.
But the question I usually ask one off the bat, if I'm working with individuals, if I'm working with couples, like, who did you have a more difficult relationship with? And that's who your partner is really going to mirror.
Wow. Interesting.
Yeah. And Harville Hendrix, he's a really like well-known couples therapist. And he's old now. He's done this work for so many years and written books. And he said, without exception in his entire career, has he seen that?
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense. It's just that
Yeah.
very important person who is imprinting on you, who you completely depend on. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, you get another intimate
Yeah.
relationship and there it is.
Yep.
Um, yeah, and I'm just thinking more translation, which is so fun for me. Like the parts that get fragmented, I think some words that we use in my discipline is like, shadow, right? Would you say
Mm-hmm.
that's accurate for what you know of
Mm-hmm.
shadow? Or soul loss is an experience of when you exile different parts of yourself. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Also,
Yeah.
um, thinking of you talking, the story that you shared of this woman who finally got the chance to really like feel that burning sensation in her chest.
Mm-hmm.
It makes me think of how some of these somatic experiences that we have, they're not even necessarily something that we might pinpoint in our own lifetime because
Mm-hmm.
of intergenerational sort of relationship patterns. Like
Mm-hmm.
emotions can get imprinted in DNA, and they say it takes seven
Mm-hmm.
generations to heal something like without any other intervention, it would take 7 generations. So yeah, I just in my work as a parent coach, I always think about that too, because we're imprinting and imprinting and imprinting as the generations move forward, and of course raising my own family, and oh, what am I doing to them?
Mm-hmm.
And then reparenting myself in this
Mm-hmm.
discovery and remembering my parents' relationship, and you know grandparents, and like what am I bringing forward. It's just so fascinating. Relationship.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
I
Yeah.
feel endlessly fascinated by relationships. And just like I said, like they just become a roadmap to what is like really like beneath the surface in our unconscious. And we don't have a lot of other tools to really understand what's it's like the life's greatest mystery of what is in our unconscious. And I see the body and I see relationships as like some of the most direct paths to understanding what is really in there, what is really being called to look at and to sort of release and heal right now.
Yeah. Such a mirror. I had a client who, she has 4 children, and she came to me, and in our, we pinpointed that, um, she always thought she was great at communication. She's thought that her relationships were fine. She's like, yeah, I could totally handle this. I'm great. Like, I got no problems. And then she just realized in session with me that, well, being an only child, whenever she had a fight with a friend or something, she just went home to her room where she could be alone, and it wasn't a problem anymore, right? And she's like,
Mm-hmm.
and now she's like, I am never alone.
Mm.
I I have 4 children, and there's so much interaction between everybody, and I cannot just ignore this. I have to be here for this. And so, yeah, we work on communication, which
Mm-hmm.
is just it's, gosh, do you want to talk a little bit about communication? I'm just thinking of like all the different, I use nonviolent communication kind of as a
Mm-hmm.
basis, like figure out what you need, um, and then you
Mm-hmm.
can express it. Where do you go with that?
Yeah, kind of similar to what I shared before is really taking responsibility for what you're feeling without making it your partner's responsibility or blaming. I think blaming can get really difficult over time. Um, so even some things as simple as when you don't do the dishes, it makes me feel alone. Or, when you forget to text me good night, I feel abandoned. It's like these simple things instead of it's really owning what your experience is. And at the end of the day, we can only have our own subjective experiences of any situation. And so something that I hold really true is that, you know, say you and your partner go out to dinner and everything goes wrong and it turns into this whole fight. You come into couples counseling and you're like, well, we did this and then this is, and then the partner's like, no, 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 this happened. No, no, this happened. And it's like, so what I really try to do with folks is really, time that out. And any time that we're trying to um, argue about what happened, it becomes a power struggle. And so, really, it's like at any point, we only have our own subjective experiences of what happened. And so, I'm never interested in like, let's come to some one conclusion or perfect narrative of what happened.
Right.
I really encourage people to kind of say things from my experience, or I experienced my partner as being angry and that made me want to withdraw or shut down. Like it's it kind of can take some getting used to, but it's really like owning your experience of a situation, um, and then understanding what the impact was on you from your subjective experience, and then allowing your partner to see their impact on you. And so it really focuses on impact rather than intention. Um, so, we could all argue about intention, forever, but at the end of the day, like we both get to be the experts on how that impacted us. So even if I didn't mean to make you feel, you know, small, that comment made you feel really small, and how can I just take responsibility for that? Rather than trying to argue, there's no way that could have made you feel small. So
Wait, so
it's
taking
really
responsibility for somebody else feeling small? Is that what you're saying?
taking responsibility for the impact. I'm sorry that that comment had that impact on you. Have you heard much about intention versus impact framework?
I have. I have a hard time
Yeah.
with.
Okay. Yeah, tell me more.
Um, well, I need to think about it more. Maybe we'll.
Hmm.
I just I'm in the thick of it right now.
Hmm.
I guess okay. It seems like we've been centering the experience of the like more anxious person.
Mm-hmm.
And for any listeners, there's, this attachment theory where like um there's different types of insecure attachment, right? And there's anxious who wants to like move towards and like grab, and then there's avoidant, which gets overwhelmed by intimacy and wants to push away. And then there's disorganized, which is like you never know what you're going to get. And then there's secure attachment, which feels an internal sense of safety and is kind of more of that larger self, that the higher self that you're talking about, that is curious and calm and connected. um so when I'm in my insecure attachment, I feel like I'm definitely more avoidant.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, yeah, I just feel this really hard edge. I just came up on it hearing like if I'm in a therapy session and I'm to take responsibility for someone else feeling small
Mm-hmm.
because of something I said, that just that that um seems like something that I'm trying to grow out of. Like I don't want to take
Mm.
responsibility for other people's feelings because they should be responsible for their feelings.
So there's a difference between taking responsibility and just apologizing for the impact. Um, so you're not responsible for the way they feel or the way that they interpreted the comment, but you can still take responsibility for the impact.
Right. Like, okay, yeah. And channel that higher self where I have empathy and I see you're experiencing this and I care about you. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Is that kind of more
Yeah,
the goal
yeah,
to move towards?
yeah,
That's hard
yeah. And
work.
it's difficult. Yeah, it's really difficult because you want to defend yourself. You want to be like, that's not what I meant, or why do you always have to interpret it that way? It can be frustrating, especially, but at the end of the day, if they're feeling impacted by it, like they get to say, and then it's up to you if you want to apologize or not. Um, but at the core of, I think, the communication style that I'm trying to express is understanding our impact on each other.
Hi there. I'm making some edits and I just wanted to jump in really quick with an apology process that I try to employ myself because apologies can be hard when you're, I'm going to stand by what I said and that's not my fault that you feel that way. I just wanted to give an example of how we can kind of move past that. So, this is called the DEAR process by Michael Percelli for restoring relational integrity. So, DEAR. The D is declare that you broke the agreement, including what it was and how. For example, like I said I would stick to this budget and then I overdrew the bank account this week. Like just showing where you were outside of the agreement that you have as a couple. And it could also be, we're supposed to speak to each other respectfully, and I can see how that comment I made was disrespectful. Just own up to it. E is explore any impact. And this takes some grounding to do. This can be hard to hear from the other person. But here's some language for doing that. So I know you're upset, but can you tell me more about how you're feeling? You use reflective listening and repeat back what you hear. You don't have to agree with them, but just listen to what they have to say. Okay, so for you, you were really triggered, and you were feeling like I don't love you anymore. I don't care about our finances. Just get the information. Just focus on getting the information. You don't have to agree with it. Then the A is amends by investing back into the relationship. Amends is really the most important thing, right? Like how am I going to change moving forward? This is what actually builds a relationship. So an amends could be, with the budget example, I'll put some of my discretionary spending money back into the account to make up for it and then follow through, actually do it. Or just say, I honestly apologize. I lost track of where we were at and I wasn't paying attention. I apologize. Here's what I'll do in the future. I'll check more often before I go spend money. Right. And so I just moved to the next one, the R, recommit or renegotiate. For example, I'll make an effort to check the balance, or when I am noticing that I'm agitated, I'll make sure that I get something to eat because I'm usually hungry at this time, and that's why I'm talking to you this way. Or something that my husband has done is, when after he sits in rush hour for an hour and a half to come home, he goes and he takes a shower right when he comes home from work, so he can just kind of wash the day off and then be present with the kids. So like, what are we going to do to move on? Let's recommit or renegotiate the terms of our relationship. Like, this actually doesn't work for me, so I need something to change so that I can be in integrity with you. Okay, back to my chat with Lindsey.
So even though when I withdraw, it's deeply dysregulating for you, like I can work with, I can still have empathy for how I can take care of myself in the withdrawal and feel empathy for how that impacts you.
Yeah. Yeah, I work with codependency, where it's like codependents try to do anything to keep their partner from feeling dysregulated, right? So it's like,
Yeah.
in my so much of my evolution has been like growing out of that, to where like, no, I am okay with you feeling dysregulated. That belongs to
hmm
you. I need
hmm
to take care of myself. And I can verbalize it as it comes out of the shadow. Um, but yeah, in the shadow, it's avoidant. It's attachment avoidant.
hmm
So yeah, I guess like the edge that I've been working on in my own personal life is like how to be explicit about what's going on. Um,
hmm
and just say like, this is what's happening right now. Yes, you are uncomfortable with
Yeah.
this. I see you. I'm not
hmm
punishing you. I'm taking
hmm
care of my need.
Yeah. Yeah. And that can be hard to do, in a moment of withdrawal, in a moment of avoidance. Like that's the work of avoidance is to understand how can I take care of myself and sort of maintain contact with a partner, not like direct contact, but like, let me say that again. How can I take care of understand what my needs are? I'm feeling overwhelmed. How can I take care of myself? But how can I do it relationally? So in a way that my partner feels safe with or doesn't send them into dysregulation, like
Mhm.
I'm gonna go take a walk, I need to take care of myself, or this conversation's like making me feel too overwhelmed. Can we try again tomorrow? It's trying
Yeah,
to just communicate through the withdrawal and the avoidance
definitely.
rather than just the cutoff, which, then throws your anxious partner into a swirl.
Right. Or yeah, or going into like dangerous avoidance and numbing coping
Hmm.
mechanisms.
Yeah.
Oh, like going and like sleeping with somebody else or going and like going on a bender, whether it's like gambling or drinking or like some sort of destructive pattern to like make the boundary for you to where you're so intolerable. This is what kind of what
Hmm.
I hear about in my circles. um
Hmm.
yeah, and that can really cause lasting ruptures rather than just
Hmm.
owning up to it and taking responsibility. Like I hear you, I see you, I can't be there for you in this way like right now. Can we talk tomorrow?
Hmm. And then it's on the anxious partners, then it's their responsibility to receive that boundary and regulate their own anxiety. It sort of comes back to the parts work too, is that parts work is really interesting in relationship because usually what's happening is we have these protector parts. So these parts are really trying to protect us and keep us safe. And so usually when I'm working with an individual struggling in a relationship, um, there's two protector parts at play. And so, kind of in the example we were just talking about, that withdrawal is a deeply protective strategy to protect you from feeling something. So, something you experienced with intimacy, with conflict, was too overwhelming to you to feel when you were younger. And so, when you feel this in your adult relationship, your stored memory is to withdraw and to protect yourself.
Yeah.
And so, what I help people do is what are the protective strategies at play? And that could be like anger, that could be withdrawal, that could be dissociation, that could be rumination. Like, there's all these different protective strategies. But when we can understand that this is actually protecting you, I think it allows you to access compassion both for yourself and for your partner, and to also understand that there's something deeper that it's trying to protect. And if we can
Right.
actually get past the protectors into these exiles or to these wounded parts of you, then that's where the real like work can happen
Yeah.
in relationship. But if we never move past the protectors, we'll just stay
Right.
in conflict and we'll just stay in a dynamic because that's really what's in conflict is the protectors.
That's so true. Yeah,
Yeah.
and getting into that, um, we talk about like uh hard pain and soft pain. I see your hard pain. It's coming out as fight and righteousness.
Hmm.
Like I
Hmm.
see there is pain there. Which
Yeah.
is a huge thing to hear. Like I'm fighting and you see pain. Like, thank you.
Hmm.
Thank you for
Yeah.
seeing that this is
Yeah.
pain. And then I'm curious, like, what is the softer pain underneath? Yeah, that's how my
Yeah.
teachers taught me.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it's kind of bringing it back to communication too. It's the difference of when couples are in content versus feeling. So the content, they just want to argue, no, this happened, this is, and they just want to get into it. And the feeling is really being in touch with, like, I'm actually just feeling so disconnected and abandoned, lonely, neglected, something. But it's like, how can you sort of get out of the content and get into the present moment of what you're feeling right now, and like how can we both connect from that place rather than arguing about all these things that have happened between us.
Right, right. And yeah, and that's a challenge. It's like, okay, and listening to you talk about this, like the plot of this, that, and the other thing for 20 minutes, like, can we
Mhm.
just, like,
Mhm.
I got it. Like,
Mhm.
let's go underneath here.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah. Coach to coach.
So
What were you going to say?
Yeah, another big part of my work is nervous system work and polyvagal theory. So,
Yeah.
and that's the somatic part of my work, is we create protective strategies and protective parts to keep us safe. And those parts actually won't give up that protective strategy unless they feel safe enough to do so.
Mm-hmm.
So I won't stop getting angry. When I feel abandoned, I get angry. And I'm not, my anger, and then my anger is causing all this conflict with my partner.
Hmm.
And so we could focus on the anger for as long as we want, but deep down, like, this abandoned part needs to feel safe. And once this abandoned part feels safe, it won't have to feel so much anger or deploy so much anger.
Hmm.
It can be like, oh, what if I could actually just show up and not be angry? And so what I do with folks is just really help them understand, like, what is the trauma, what is the past experiences that are activating their nervous system to such a point where connection is actually impossible. Curiosity, compassion becomes impossible. And so, like, how can we bring you back down to a regulated state so that you can hear your partner, you can see your partner? So many couples, when they're in high conflict or just dynamics, they just kind of live in that activated state. And when I work with couples, like, I actually can't even I have to sort of time out the session because I can't do work between two people whose nervous systems are unregulated, or even when
100%.
one is. When your nervous system is activated, the only thing that you're like worried about is like safety and like defending yourself
Yeah.
because you feel threatened.
Yeah.
And that's not a place to like, empathize and find compassion.
Right. No,
So,
you just can't.
yeah.
Yeah, definitely. No, I love polyvagal theory. I even like made my own like cheat sheet. Like, put this on your
Mm-hmm.
fridge.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hmm. It's really good. It calls to mind, and I want to hear what you think about this. When I was getting my parent coaching certification, it was a nice, like, lengthy process. It was uh led by, a professional therapist and everything. Science-based curriculum. Uh, and for our group sessions to talk about these concepts, Rebecca Liddon, hello, Rebecca, you will be on here someday. She said, a lot of people talk about a safe space. I invite you into this container, which is a brave space.
Mm-hmm.
It's not necessarily always going to feel safe for you.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just hoping everybody takes my invitation to step in anyways.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about that?
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's such a difference. I mean, we talk about this a lot in my world, but there's a real difference. Maybe the distinction I would make is um, like lack of safety and discomfort, and sort of distinguishing between the two of those, because in growth and being challenged and trying something different and bringing awareness to things that you've kept out of awareness for so long, there's discomfort. Like, there's always discomfort and like a little bit of a rub and change. And sometimes people can like really like not like that feeling, but that's not at its core unsafe, and unsafe is yeah, there's harm, there's lack of containment, there's something else going on. So um
Who draws the line though? Because I think, knowing for like neurodivergent children, for example, like,
mhm.
feeling discomfort, like very specific amounts of discomfort is so dysregulating to their nervous system that, yeah, they feel like they're in danger.
Yeah.
So who makes that distinction?
Well, I guess I'm talking about more in like the coaching space. Like, that's like the container I'm trying to create with my clients, is like, how can I lovingly support discomfort, but not lovingly support and never trying to make anyone feel or experience unsafety.
I'm going to be chewing on that for a while.
Mm-hmm.
It's just one of the,
Yeah.
it's human interaction. It's wild and unknown. And it's like you don't necessarily know
Mm-hmm.
what's gonna happen when you get into a session with somebody. It's like, what are we working with today? Let's see where this goes. And how can I
Yeah.
hold myself and you in
Mm-hmm.
compassion? And that's what makes it so exhilarating to
Mm-hmm.
me. What do you think?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. The potential for change, the unknown, the
Relationship
mystery.
relationship really inspires that, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. You never know. Like, it's just so wild. I mean, in my own experience, just this idea of just meeting someone, starting to date someone, and then all of a sudden it's like, wow, now we're in a soup of all my stuff and all your stuff, and what's mine and what's yours, and what's incompatibility, what's here to be looked at and healed. Like, there's just so much that happens when two humans come in relationship, and that could be in friendship. It's more pronounced obviously in intimate partnership, but it's all relationships. Different parts of us come forward, different parts of us get activated, and I think it's fascinating to just really constantly check in on like yeah, what part of me is coming forth in this relationship,
Hmm.
and how might that be related to my past. And I think at its base to like trust and safety are the precursors to intimacy. So that's something I work with folks a lot on, is like, how can we build just a solid sense of safety
Right.
in order to be in relationship with one another.
Right. And to really lay the groundwork for letting it be a transformational
Mm-hmm.
experience. I just put out a reel today and the
Mm.
headline is all my friends are getting divorced. And then I just wrote about how like I know it has to happen sometimes, but I never want it to happen to me.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
like really the relational petal, it teaches us how to
yeah,
transform like while in the company of another person.
yeah. Relationships are like a pressure cooker for growth and transformation if we allow them to be, And so there is, you know, when I see couples that are just squarely in their dynamic and in their pain and they just can't get out of it, like, that is when you're that's sort of a definition of codependence, is when you're just enabling each other to stay in the wounded place.
Mm.
And and like I said, a lot of people get stuck there and a lot of people give up there. Um, but there is a way to move past that, and it takes so much self-awareness, so much humility, and so much like deep self-inquiry. Yeah.
Is there anything else you'd like to add? Where can people find you if they want to? Oh, you've got a great blog. Make sure what
But yeah, I
should I just
have,
lead
yeah.
people to your website or what do you want?
Yeah, website's great, lindseybournecoaching.com. I have a blog there where I write about some of these topics, and I have a newsletter that I send out every couple weeks. And yeah, that'd be a great place to send folks.
Awesome. We'll do. The link will be in the show notes. And yeah, thanks again for coming
Great.
on.
Thank you
So
so
happy to
much,
have you
Bridget.
here.
This is so fun to chat with you.
Definitely. All right. Bye for now.
Okay, bye.
Thanks for listening. If this spoke to you, give it a like, subscribe, and share it with a friend. To discover which of the 5 petals is asking for your care right now, take the free 5 petals assessment at bridgidberkano.com/self-assessment. In closing, I'll leave you with a favorite phrase I learned in Circle. What's mine is mine, what's yours is yours, and what's ours is ours. Until next time, be well.